Been a while since I've made a Smash video. Been a while since the topic of Smash has been relevant. But since I've been on something of a roll making roster videos, or I guess, roster worthiness assessment videos?
What do we do here again?
Because I've been having fun making videos about potential fighting game characters, I've decided to draft a little something for my first love of fighting games, Super Smash Bros. I've made it no secret in the past that my fondness for this franchise lies more in its elevation of Nintendo's worlds than it does in any notions of a Hall of Fame for the entire medium of gaming. And there was a time I was working on a 100 potential first-party newcomers video for this channel, but despite getting pretty far into production, I never ended up finishing it. Though an unfinished version exists on my Patreon page, maybe I'll revisit the topic again someday, I don't know. But for today, I'm taking a different approach, one that doesn't exclude third-party characters. What I've done is come up with a system where I look at every series that has a rep in Smash Ultimate, and pick 2 characters from each one to rank on 2 tier lists the same way I did in my obscure Marvel Token Picks video. The 2 characters per series will be one I perceive to be most likely, and one I would like to see the most. The tiers on this first list ranking likelihood are all but guaranteed, seems feasible, out of pocket but possible, and I have nothing but doubts. The tiers on the second list ranking my personal opinion are I'd die happy, I'd be very pleased, I wouldn't be thrilled but not mad, and I'd mask my rage with apathy. I've come up with 33 categories from which to pick our candidates, and some of you may already be wondering how that works when there are 40 series with playable characters in Ultimate. Well, it's like this, see? I've combined Game & Watch, Ice Climber, Rob, and Duck Hunt into one retro category. That brings the number down to 37. I've combined Wii Fit and the Miis into a Blue Ocean category. That brings us down to 36. I've elected to ignore individual guest series and focus instead on the third-party companies, plus a couple notable partners and subsidiaries among them, thus removing Metal Gear, Sonic, Mega Man, Pac-Man, Street Fighter, Final Fantasy, Bayonetta, Castlevania, Persona, Dragon Quest, Banjo-Kazooie, King of Fighters / Fatal Fury, Minecraft, Tekken, and Kingdom Hearts, which brings us down to 21. Then re-adding Konami, SEGA, Capcom, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, Atlus, Rare, SNK, Microsoft, and yes, even Disney, which brings us back up to 31. And finally, adding a category for unrepresented contemporary Nintendo franchises and a category for unrepresented third-party companies brings us to our working number of 33. Okay, that's enough of that. There's a fine line between preambling and rambling, and I'm spinning it like the guys who blow up the blimp in SpongeBob. Let's start the character rating already. Going in chronological order relative to their history of having playable characters in Smash, we start with the Mario series, which has only ever gone one game without getting new characters, if you don't count Wario and Diddy Kong in Brawl, as they rep sibling series to the Big M. All this to say, it ain't too far-fetched to think more Mario characters could be on the cards for Smash's future. So far as I can tell, I think Captain Toad is the most likely to be Mario's next newcomer. Toads in general are extremely iconic to Nintendo at large, and this one has his own sub-series to boot. I'd rank him on the seems feasible tier in terms of likeliness, but for my own taste, I wouldn't be thrilled, but not mad. Now there's an oddly specific concept for a Mario character I thought of and actually used in that Scrapped 100 first-party reps video I mentioned earlier, and Mario Kart World has only made this idea more relevant and exciting. Kart Racer. Before we knew about Mario Kart World, I thought this would be a clean way to sneak Waluigi onto the roster alongside 7 or more other oddball Mario reps. But now that we live in a post-Mario Kart world, I want to see Cow, I want to see Conkdor, I want to see Pianta! It's out of pocket, but possible. And I'd even go so far as to say I'd die happy if it happens. Now for Mario's sister series that sadly hardly qualifies as a sister series, Yoshi, which has only ever had the one guy repping that egg icon. If we're getting another Yoshi rep, I think the likeliest pick is Poochie. He makes the strongest case for being a Yoshi character rather than a Mario character. He got shared billing in the series' second latest release and a playable spot in Mario Kart Tour too. And you know, he's got a charm about him. Doesn't change the fact that I have nothing but doubts about his inclusion though. And as for my own taste, I wouldn't be thrilled, nor mad. As for a Yoshi character I'd most want to see, I mean, I hardly want another Yoshi character as it is, but Kamek would be more interesting than Poochie. He's got a little more cachet with the wider Mario franchise while still being a a recognizable, recurring villain for the Yoshi franchise. He's an out-of-pocket but possible pick, and honestly, if only for the fact he'd be another villain rival for Smash's original 10 series, I think I'd be very pleased if he were playable. Now for the series that the Mario series arguably spun off from first, Donkey Kong. I, for one, am pretty happy with the series' current selection of combatants in Ultimate, but there are still plenty of prospective characters who could brighten up a new Smash roster on the whole. I think the most likely DK character to break through in this way is none other than Pauline. Nintendo's been showing her a lot of love across the Mario series since last generation, and are now inaugurating her as a core Donkey Kong character again, albeit in a very unexpected way. I think her eventual inclusion is all but guaranteed, and you know what? I'd be very pleased about it. For now, maybe my mind will have changed after I actually play DK Bonanza, but I don't think it will. Now, honestly, my most wanted pick here isn't one I'd like to see more than Pauline per se, but probably just as much, more or less. Cranky Kong. I'd like to see him given a one-of-a-kind moveset that doesn't try to juggle game-accurate meter mechanics or whatever, but mixes his crotchety personality and whack-and-stick with a couple callbacks to his classic barrel-chucking days. He's an out-of-pocket but possible pick, and I'd be very pleased to see him. Now for Nintendo's second pillar franchise, The Legend of Zelda. This is one of those series whose current swath of characters I am perfectly content with. If anything, I want Nintendo to let Arxis or somebody make a dedicated Zelda fighting game already, but that's a video for another day. I have a suspicion that Echo Zelda is the most likely newcomer here. Unlike Breath of the Wild Zelda, who people actually thought had an honest shot at being a DLC character in Ultimate for some reason, this Zelda variant is far more visually distinct from the base character, and has a built-in moniker a la Toon Link that doesn't feel forced. Triforced. So many pun options, I can't pick just one. To be completely honest though, I could see her ability to summon echoes being integrated into base Zelda's moveset, so I have some doubts regarding the likelihood of her inclusion, but nevertheless, I still think she seems feasible, and for my own tastes, I think I'd be very pleased. But speaking of my own tastes, from the earliest days of my Smash speculating life, when Brawl was new and the Pokémon Trainer 3-in-1 fighter concept blew my mind, there's been one Zelda rep I've been wanting to see more than any other, and it's Masked Link. Young Link by default, but able to transform into Deku Link, Goron Link, and Zora Link. And for his final smash, Fierce Deity Link. Could this be any more perfect? What better way to get a playable Goron and Zora onto the roster, you know? I have nothing but doubts regarding this inclusion, but I'd die happy if it happens. Next up, Metroid. A series well represented by its heroine and fan-favorite recurring villain, but still full of cool characters who could really liven up a roster with their inclusion. I think the most likely to join a future Smash game is Psylocke. Of all the Metroid Prime Hunters characters, he's actually breaking into the main series and is positioned as an integral villain for Prime 4. He certainly seems feasible, and I'd be very pleased with him. Now as for the one I want the most, it's gotta be Ravenbeak. Ordinarily, I'm not huge on the idea of flavor of the latest game characters joining Smash. I was never big on fan-advocated picks like Girahim or N from Pokemon, for instance. But Ravenbeak is Raven Peak. I don't want to spoil Metroid Dread for you, so play for yourself and you'll find he carries a ton of series significance, despite being introduced so recently. He's an out-of-pocket but feasible pick so far as I can tell, and I'd be very pleased with his inclusion. F-Zero, my beloved. You have so many amazing characters of all shapes, sizes, persuasions, and potentials. Yet most people only know you as the home of Douglas J. Falcon. It's hard to determine who for this series is most likely, as the sad reality of the situation is they're all very unlikely across the board. But if one candidate stands a better chance than the rest, I think it's Samurai Goro. He was considered by Sakurai before, he has an assist trophy, he's been in every F-Zero game, and as much as I love him, there are so many more interesting F-Zero characters I'd rather see in Smash than him. I have nothing but doubts regarding his likelihood as it is, but if he were to happen, I wouldn't be thrilled, but you know, wouldn't be mad. Far from it, in fact. Now, if it was tough to pick a likely candidate from this bunch, picking a favorite is like Sophie's choice. I like Drac, I think he's my favorite, but he's too out of pocket even for me. That'd be like the only two Metroid characters being Samus and Noxus. If F-Zero was gonna get another rep in Smash, I'd want it to be one of the funky alien bastards who's got the most history with the franchise, and/or Falcon himself, And that's why my most wanted pick for this video is Pico. I'd really like to see him get a redesign that marries elements of his SNES and 99 look, which I prefer, with his X Onward turtley design, which is cool in its own right, but takes away from his own selfness. And I'd like to see him sporting a moveset that just has fun making up things he can do in addition to shoot guns. Smash Bros. Invented Falcon Punch. Who's to say they can't invent, I don't know, Pico Starstorm? I have nothing but doubts about this happening, but I'd die happy if it did. Starfox! You and I both know Crystal is the most likely to join the fray because her popularity with fans over the years got her an assist in Ultimate. I have nothing but doubts regarding her likelihood, and to be honest, I wouldn't be thrilled nor mad if she got in. For my money though, we need Andross. He's the Ganon of the Star Fox franchise, and he has a more interesting potential kit than most potential Star Fox characters, I think. I also have nothing but doubts about him, but I'd be very pleased if he managed to join the cast. Kirby, that's the name we all know. His trifecta with DDD and Meta Knight represents the series well, but Kirby players will tell you that Waddle Dee, the one with the bandana, not only completes the post-returns quartet, but is arguably more relevant to the franchise than Meta Knight at this point. Oftentimes, he's practically Luigi to Kirby's Mario. Of course, I think he's the most likely to join the roster of all the Kirby cast, but people suspect Sakurai has an odd inbuilt bias against this guy. We'll see how accurate that is soon enough as more information on Kirby Air Riders becomes available. For now, I'm gonna say he seems feasible and I'd be very pleased with his inclusion. Now as for my most wanted Kirby rep, I have a few I think would be cool, but none more appealing than the trio of Rick, Kine, and Ku. The Dreamland series' main three animal friends who got their own very Smash-like moveset where they all worked simultaneously in Kirby Star Allies. I have nothing but doubts regarding their inclusion, but I would die happy to see him join the fray. Squidward, what's the name of the Earthbound series in Japan? You're right on the money, Mr. Squidward! Like F-Zero, I don't think any mother character is likely to join the fight at this point, but if one stands above the rest, weirdly, it might be Ninten? He's the only lead protagonist in the franchise not playable in Smash, and you could just sorta semi-echo him off of Ness or Lucas, like, you know, Wolf is to Fox and Falco. I have nothing but doubts, and I wouldn't exactly be thrilled, but, you know, far from mad, of course. As for who I'd like to see most, Gygus. That guy. I feel about him the way I do about Kamek to Yoshi. Finding a way to bring a Smash 64 original series and other recurring villain rep would be very cool. I also have nothing but doubts, but I'd be very pleased with this one. Now, finally, the last of the original 10 Smash 64 series, Pokémon. We all know the most likely character to be added in a future Smash game is a Pokémon that doesn't exist yet. For the last 3 games in the Smash series, Sakurai has reserved a spot for yet-to-exist pocket monsters, and no, it doesn't piss me off. Why? Do I sound pissed off to you, huh? Think I'm pissed off or something? This is a character all but guaranteed to happen, and I'll be masking my rage with apathy if/when it does. But I'm not a Pokemon hater, folks. I just think the current Smash model of including a flavor of the Gen Mon is a little boring is all. I'd really like to see more picks similar in spirit to the Pokemon trainer. Fighters who represent a full facet of the Pokemon world, you know? My most wanted Pokemon Smash fighter would be Todd Snap. Give him the 0-2. Give him his flute. Give him his camera. Give him his pester balls. Let him set up chains or combos with moves that summon passing by Pokemon who'll deal more damage to opponents depending on how close to the center of the frame Todd snaps their photo in. I have nothing but doubts about this coming to fruition, but I would die happy if it happened. Fire Emblem. The series with the single highest amount of characters in the game already, some fucking how. Don't give me guff, Fire Emblem fans. I'm a massive ARMS fan, but if there were 8 ARMS characters in Smash, I'd also think that was excessive. Like Pokemon, the most likely Fire Emblem newcomer is one who doesn't exist yet. The protagonist of whichever Fire Emblem game came out most recently, all but guaranteed. I'd mask my rage with apathy. There actually is a Fire Emblem character I do want to see in Smash though. One who I hope and pray could help trim the fat off the series' overrepresentation for the future. Kieran, from Fire Emblem Heroes. He or she can summon Fire Emblem characters of all classes and abilities from across the entire franchise. So, you know, more characters can be represented through them without the character select screen having a huge portion just for them. This would be an out-of-pocket but possible pick and one I'd be very pleased with. unless it does nothing to cut down on the Fire Emblem representation in a roster that makes cuts from Ultimate, in which case I'd be masking my rage with apathy. But let's ignore that possibility. Now for the one other Smash series staple since Melee, which was arguably ignored in Ultimate, retro Nintendo characters who rep their own series. Taking into account which characters Sakurai has considered for Smash in the past, and excluding Ayumi Tachibana because her series has been fully revived, with remakes and a contemporary new entry no less, I think the most likely retro Nintendo candidate is Takumaru from Mysterious Marasume Castle, the protagonist of the long-lost sibling series to Zelda, Metroid, and Kid Icarus. He'd be an out-of-pocket but possible pick, and I think I'd be very pleased just to see a new retro Nintendo rep in general, to be honest. But for my own most wanted, oh man, where do I begin? I love so many of these long-dormant retro Nintendo franchises. You know I love them. But I don't just want to pick the one I feel rounds out the vintage 80s picks or is the most funny or obscure. Sorry, Climber. Bruh. No, I want to break new ground. Choose someone who represents a facet of past Nintendo that's significant but never coming back. I'm choosing Harry, a robot from the Virtual Boy original fighting game Teleroboxer. Who else could represent this odd fork in Nintendo's road that they're finally far enough away from to poke fun at? Plus, he's just a cool guy, and Teleroboxer is unironically a cool game. I have nothing but doubts about Harry's chances, but I would die happy if he made it in. Time now for the Mario series' weirdo cousin twice removed, Wario. Similarly to F-Zero, there are so many exciting potential newcomers here that it can be hard to judge which single one is my most wanted, or even most likely. Based on pure popularity and sheer amount of previous Smash-born exposure, I think the most likely candidate is the girl next door living in the haunted mansion, Ashley. She's an out-of-pocket but possible pick who I'd be very pleased with. As for who I most want to see, well, this may seem like cheating on multiple fronts, but my choice is also Ashley. But, specifically, the teenage version of the character who is the star of her own squad-based shoot-'em-up series Crazy Galaxy, which doesn't exist, but was the basis for an elaborate April Fool's joke on the now-defunct 3DS game Nintendo Badge Arcade. I don't have time to go into the deep lore nor reckon whether or not this should or shouldn't be considered a separate series from WarioWare, but I do have the time to say I have nothing but doubt Smash Bros. Would ever give us Ashley and Squad from the official fake game Crazy Galaxy, but I would die happy if they did. Now for the series that would have been considered part of the retro Nintendo category if Sakurai didn't go on to revive the series and add 2 more characters plus a ton of adjacent content to future Smash titles, Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus Uprising alone has a ton of fun characters that could make for neat Smash fighters, and plenty of them have been adapted into assist trophies and the like, but I think the most likely character to join Pit, Pitu, and Palutena is the series' recurring antagonist, Medusa, who would make for a fun counterpoint to Palutena, and serve as Smash's first villainess. Dark Samus doesn't count. It's not a girl, it's a thing. She seems feasible, and I'd be quite pleased to have her. As for my most wanted Kid Icarus character, sorry, there's no beating Medusa, it's also Medusa. I'm not even going to attempt a rug pull like I just did for Ashley. We're just gonna move on. Cry me a river, Hades, Verady, Phosphora, Magnus, Thanatos, etc. fans. Whoo boy, we're in Pikmin country now. I love this series. Nintendo love this series. Sakurai does not seem especially interested in showing this series much love, but whatever. I think the most likely newcomer is Ochi. Whether alone or with a captain on his back, this Pikmin pup is all but guaranteed, and I'd be very pleased with his inclusion. But there are many, many oddball Pikmin creatures I'd love to take control of in Smash, or really any game, but I digress. I think adding Louie as a Smash fighter and having his moveset revolve around narrowly avoiding being attacked by Weevils, Snagrets, Scutterchucks, etc. without even noticing would be an amazing way to both showcase the Pikmin series' incredible fauna, as well as adapt the comically enigmatic nature of Louie to a Smash moveset. I think Louie is an out-of-pocket but possible pick, and I'd die happy to have him on a Smash roster. Ah, Nintendo's only tentpole IP not to revolve around perilous adventure, Animal Crossing. I don't know how much more representation this series needs on the playable character front apart from its nameless avatar, but Isabelle's also in the game, so what's 1 or 2 more, I guess? I think the most likely newcomer would be Tom Nook. He's a series constant, a feasible option for sure, but one I wouldn't feel anything for. To be blunt, I really don't want any more Animal Crossing characters in Smash, but if I was allowed to pick one, no holds barred, I'm going with Cyrano. Not because he's a martial artist, but because he's an anteater. I like anteaters. I have nothing but doubts, but you know what? I'd be pleased with him. I like anteaters. Now for another series that would have been lumped in with Retro Nintendo if it weren't for the fact it actually has contemporary entries and such. Well, had anyway. It's Punch-Out! There was a time everyone was predicting King Hippo, but nah man, we've got enough of this archetype in Smash for real. If any Punch-Out character is most likely to be added, it's Glass Joe, as a Pichu-like semi-echo of Little Mac. He'd be an out-of-pocket but possible pick. I wouldn't have any strong feelings about him though. Now if I could pick one Punch-Out character to add to Smash, it'd be Great Tiger. He's just got a special level of pizzazz no other fighter in Punch-Out or Smash has, really. I have nothing but doubts this would happen. And honestly, pizzazz aside, I have no strong feelings for him either. Now on to Monolith Soft's Golden Goose, Xenoblade Chronicles. This series hasn't been around long enough to establish the trend Pokémon and Fire Emblem have. Nevertheless, I feel like it's all but guaranteed the next Smash game will add a character from the latest game that doesn't exist yet. And yeah, I'd be masking my rage with apathy about it. I'm not a hater though. I just have little interest in this world, its look, its mechanics, or its characters. That said, I'm gonna go with Elma from Xenoblade Chronicles X as my most wanted character, because I like big robots. And it's my understanding that she is a character who can operate a big robot. She seems feasible to me, and I wouldn't be mad nor thrilled to see her join the fray. Hope you brought your swimsuit, cause we're diving into the blue ocean. Named for Nintendo's business strategy of tapping into lifestyle markets their competitors ignore. Smash's current Blue Ocean reps are the Wii Fit Trainer and the Mii Fighters. The most likely character who fits this categorization to be added to Smash is the Ring Fit Adventurer. That game is super solid, sold phenomenally well, and has a ton to offer in terms of Smash content, and came from Nintendo internally. I think this character's all but guaranteed, and I'd be pleased should this come to pass. Now when thinking of potential Blue Ocean characters to include for my most wanted, I thought about Brain Age, Big Brain Academy, Art Academy, all the educational series pretty much. But ultimately, I've decided to go with the educational series closer to my animal-loving heart. It's the Endless Ocean Diver. Not Oceania, not any named Endless Ocean character, the Nameless Diver, baby. Let's get some photorealistic marine animals going Mariana Trench on some fools, huh? I have nothing but doubts this would happen, but I would die happy and laughing to see it. Speaking of marine creatures, we've reached the last and most recent pillar Nintendo IP, Splatoon. This series is still so new, so fresh. A new character or two feels inevitable, but who will they be? Well, I think the most likely would simply be Octoling. Not Agent 8 or Marina or anyone with a name, just an Octoling who would play similar to Inkling, but with different weapons for different specials and maybe one or two other differences. I think Octoling's all but guaranteed, and I'd be indifferent to it happening. My most wanted Splatoon rep is admittedly contingent on information on a future game we know little about as of now, but screw it, I'm going in. I want the mechanic from Splatoon Raiders. It looks like they can build and deploy robot buddies. I like robots. Can we ride one by default like Tron Bonne? That'd be cool. I think this is a feasible pick, and I'd be pleased with it. Last but certainly not least from Smash's currently repped Nintendo series, my beloved ARMS. If any of the existing characters is most likely to join or even replace Min Min on a future roster, it's Springman. I believe Kosuke Ibuki when he says there is no single protagonist in ARMS, but he's the beginner-friendly, most intentionally basic fighter of the game. Yet he's still really cool and interesting despite that because ARMS is ARMS and ARMS is amazing. He seems feasible, and I'd be very pleased with his inclusion. But of course, he's not my favorite character in the game. I have a lot of favorite characters in this game. It is one of my favorite games. But you know what game I'd love to see get Smash representation even more? An ARMS sequel. That, of course, doesn't exist as of right now. If Smash is gonna promise playable character spots to particular series as a matter of course, I'd at least like for them to include a series I like in the lineup for once. My most wanted ARMS character for the next Smash game is a character who comes from another ARMS game, which I want even more than another Smash game. This too is a feasible pick, assuming ARMS 2 is on the cards, and I don't doubt it, but where is it already? And I think it goes without saying, I'd die happy if this happens. One last first-party stop before venturing into the world of third-party picks. Let's consider series from Nintendo who haven't got playable characters in Ultimate. I think the most likely series to get this treatment is Rhythm Heaven. It's too wackadoo to be considered Blue Ocean, it's too recent/contemporaneous to be considered retro, and it's had a character considered for a playable spot before. but they had to be cut. I don't know if they'd go with the Chorus Kids or the Barista Dog or a new central character from the upcoming Rhythm Heaven Groove, but either way, I think a character who embodies the entire concept of Rhythm Heaven is a feasible pick, with whom I'd be very pleased. Now let's answer the big question. What's the one character from a yet-to-have-a-playable fighter in Smash Nintendo series I most want? It is a difficult question. Most characters I want to see in Smash fit this description, and I've gone back and forth multiple times trying to dedicate myself to an answer for this video. But ultimately, I've opted to go with my heart and choose the character of this description I've wanted to see join Smash for the longest time, Ray Mark III from Custom Robo. I have nothing but doubts regarding any Custom Robo character on the next Smash roster, but I'd die happy to see it happen. Wow, that was a lot of characters. I'd say let's take an intermission or something before we move on to the third-party picks. But there's a 50 or more % chance this video will get split into 2 parts anyway, it's so long. So let's just move on to the third-party picks already. Solid Snake's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Brawl gave Konami the distinction of being Smash's first ever third-party guest company. And Simon and Rector Belmont have gone on to bolster their presence in Ultimate. If any Konami character is most likely to join the next Smash roster, it's probably a Silent Hill rep. If Smash is going to continue flying toward the sun with guest inclusions, a survival horror rep feels like an obvious benchmark to pass. I don't know which Silent Hill rep would get the honor, so let's just go with Pyramid Head for iconicism's sake. It'd be an out-of-pocket but possible pick, and one I wouldn't feel strongly about one way or the other. If there's a Konami character I'd most like to see in Smash, it's probably Frogger. Specifically his Swampy's Revenge look. Rides the line neatly between "that's a Hall of Fame gaming protagonist" and "that's just a frog." I have nothing but doubts this would happen, but I'd be very pleased with it. SEGA shares Konami's first guest distinction with Sonic's inclusion in Brawl, and Bayonetta won the Smash 4 fighter ballot by technicality, but still, SEGA's got a pretty good relation with Smash. If the abandonment of the SEGA All-Star series in tandem with the advent of its simulacrum of a spiritual successor, Sonic Racing, is anything to go by, the Sonic series is probably the most likely SEGA franchise to get another Smash character. And which Sonic character is constantly winning popularity polls? It's Shadow the Hedgehog. He seems feasible, and I'd have no strong feelings one way or the other. Now, I am actually a pretty big fan of most classic SEGA franchises. Monkey Ball, Comic Zone, Space Channel 5, Decap Attack, I'm not kidding, I really like Decap Attack. But my attitude toward third-party Smash fighters at this point is bring that eclectic yet unified Nintendo All-Star energy that Nintendo themselves couldn't achieve to the same effect with just their own All-Stars. And I think no other SEGA character has that energy stronger than Hatsune Miku. A little less than 10 years ago, I would have thought she'd irreparably shift Smash qualification standards, but in a post-Minecraft Steve world, she feels quaint. She's an out-of-pocket but possible pick, and one I'd be pleased to see. Why not? Now, the godfather of crossover fighting games, Capcom. They've given us fan favorites like Mega Man and Ryu, and even threw in Ken Masters. Wasn't that nice of them? There are a couple Capcom characters who feel feasible enough to join the next Smash, but I think the one with the most fan outcry and even some official acknowledgement is Dante from the Devil May Cry series. Yes, I am showing the meme Wicked on screen right now. He seems feasible, but honestly, I'd go so far as to say I'd mask my rage with apathy if he gets in. Not because I hate him or DMC, but just because there are so many more interesting Capcom characters, and Dante's sword archetype is well represented on Ultimate's roster already. As I said, there are tons of interesting Capcom characters who could make for fun Smash fighters. But my pick for Most Wanted is one who just feels at home being in a stylistically eclectic cast of slapstick fighters. Morrigan from Darkstalkers. Give her an actual model though, using the sprite again would be funny but sad. Aside from Ryu, she is the Capcom vs. character. I know Sakurai made his comment about good boys and girls when talking about Mai from Fatal Fury, but the man has a history of rescinding comments about what disqualifies characters from joining Smash as he adds them anyway, so I'm ignoring that, and saying Morrigan seems feasible, and I'd be pleased to see her. Bandai Namco, developers of the Smash series since Wii U and 3DS, and proprietors of Pac-Man and Kazuya. As much as I'd like to mention Soul Calibur in some fashion, or give the Tales of Symphonia fans a shout, I can't deny that Tekken's poster boy Heihachi is probably the most likely Namco character to make it into the next game. He's an icon, he's been considered before, it feels inevitable, I'd say he's pretty darn feasible, and you know what? I'd mask my rage with apathy if he got in, because of all the Namco characters we could see, or even fighting game icons we could see, he's pretty vanilla. My most wanted Bamco character is one whose drum I've been beating from the crustiest early days of this YouTube channel's existence. Cue the meme. I love Digimon. And even if you don't love Digimon, you want a game where Pokemon and Digimon can fight. I know you do. And these characters already have a foundation of platform fighting to build off of. That includes a Digivolution mechanic. It's too perfect. Still and all, I have nothing but doubts concerning Agumon's likeliness to make the cut, if only for the fact I've been conditioned to expect none of my personal most wanted Smash characters to ever make the cut. And with that said, of course, I would die happy to see Agumon, or any Digimon for that matter, in a Smash Bros. Game. Square Enix, the guest company that broke the seal on Pandora's Box as their first Smash fighter, and pretty much all the subsequent ones too, have very little association with Nintendo's gaming legacy. And isn't it ironic that most people want a character they co-own who is very much tied to Nintendo's legacy? Sorry though, Geno fans, I think the most likely Squeenix character to make it to the next Smash will be one wildly unappealing to me and most of you. Like, I don't know, the protagonist from Bravely Default or something. Terrifyingly feasible. Furiously apathy-inducing. My most wanted Squeenix rep isn't Geno. I want him, don't get me wrong, but not as much as I want Slime from Dragon Quest. Sorta like my pitch for Louie, I'd love to see him summoning lots of kooky Dragon Quest enemies to attack with him, especially Ant Guzzler. I like anteaters. Congrats on those 2 nickels, by the way. Feel free to leave the Doofenshmirtz quote in the comments. I don't care. I like anteaters. I have nothing but doubts about Slime's inclusion, but I'd be quite pleased with it. Now we've reached Atlus, a subsidiary of SEGA whose sole Smash rep, Joker, all but obliterated the Nintendo legacy safeguard, to which Cloud dealt the first blow. Persona 5 wasn't even on Switch at the time he was added, guys. Did it ever come to Switch? I don't care. Like Squeenix, I anticipate some sword-wielding anime template number 43-ass Twink is the most likely character to come from this company. Probably a Shin Megami Tensei rep. Very feasible and apathy/rage inspiring. If there is one Atlus character I wouldn't mind seeing though, it would be Chie and her persona Tomoe. Tomoe? With a moveset adapted from Persona 4 Arena, because I quite enjoy playing this character in BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. And from what I can tell, she's a fairly popular character to boot. Not that it matters to me either way, I like anteaters. I'd say she's an out-of-pocket but feasible pick, and I'd be pleased to see her, why not? Now on to the Absalom to Nintendo's David, Rare Limited. That's what the company's called, by the way. It was never called Rareware. Shoutouts to the cartoon gamer. Against insurmountable odds and in the midst of a trepidatious working arrangement under Microsoft that continues to bring the company woe, they managed to get Banjo-Kazooie into Smash Bros. Hands down, my favorite third-party guest to ever make it into Smash. I'd say it's generally unlikely we'll see another Rare character in Smash, but if we do get one, I feel like the Battletoads are among the likelier candidates. That IP has Mega Man and Castlevania-esque relevance to gaming history. Nintendo-adjacent gaming history, no less. Bonus points. I have nothing but doubts regarding the likelihood of their inclusion, though. And I would feel no thrill nor anger at it. A Rare character and I think most fighting game-attuned people would rather see, is a rep from Killer Instinct. Let's go with Fulgore. I always think of him when I think of this series. I have nothing but doubts, but I'd be pleased. Now we arrive at the bastard studio who will never win. Microsoft. If Cloud broke the Nintendo affiliation seal and Joker destroyed it, Steve broke the should at least be tied to the legacy of console gaming seal. And the should be stylized cohesively with the rest of the cast seal. I hate you, Jack Black. You've dashed my hopes of ever seeing obscure and long dormant Nintendo series get playable Smash characters ever again. Master Chief is probably most likely, whatever, feasible, apathy, rage, you get it. You're just lucky we let you get away with buying Activision Microblocks, because this means you've at least given me an opportunity to pitch my Skylanders Portal Master Fighter concept. I love the Pokemon trainer gimmick. Let them summon Gilgrunt, Trigger Happy, and Spyro, and Microsoft bring this series back and update Spyro's design to veer closer to his PS1 glory days. Do it! Oh, who am I kidding? I have nothing but doubts this would ever happen. But you know what? I'd die happy to see it come to fruition. Bite me. SNK. The kings of the corner next to the salad bar at every good pizza place in my neck of the woods. The most likely pick is probably We've discussed my outlook on what Sakurai said about her, and you know what? Just bump up the age rating on the game or tweak her outfit a little, for crying out loud. She isn't even as promiscuous as Bayonetta. I think she's feasible, but I'd have no strong feelings one way or the other about her. But my most wanted SNK fighter? It can only be Theo from Metal Slug. One of, if not my first ever crush on a fictional character. This stuff sticks with you, man. Include the other main Metal Slug characters in as palette swaps, it'd be very cool. So cool, in fact, that I have nothing but doubts about its likeliness. But you know, by now, that just means I'd die happy to see it happen. Now, at the end of the already repped guest companies in Ultimate, no. Disney. Guys, I am that guy. I have my reservations about certain guest characters from non-Nintendo affiliated series in Smash that has only led me to the point I'd rather see all guest content in Smash just go away altogether so obscure Nintendo stuff can get more love again. The very fact that the Walt Disney Company is credited on a Smash Bros. Title screen makes my skin crawl. Sora rides a fine line, but we risk crossing the Rubicon forever if we get a playable character who originates from comics, movies, or TV in Smash. That said, my sinking gut knows too well that there are no Kingdom Hearts side characters who are more likely to get into Smash Bros. Compared to the leader of the club that's made for you and me, MICKEYMOUSE. I imagine if this does happen, Sakurai would at least fashion his moveset in such a way to primarily reference his gaming history. Hell, maybe Disney would request themselves he only be considered Epic Mickey and not Mickey Mouse proper. But alas, while I have doubts regarding the rat's inclusion, I don't have nothing but doubts. This pick, while out of pocket, is soberingly possible. And while I don't know if I could sport an air of apathy strong enough to mask my rage, that's what I would do if old Eight Fingers made the cut. Okay, deep breaths. Disney has some video game originated properties too. Remember Spectrobes? That franchise Disney wanted to rival Pokémon? There's a deep cut for you. It's barely a blip on the radar of gaming legacy, but it's a fun oddity. I own both games and I haven't played either of them for more than like a minute. And yet, I'd still be pleased to see him on the roster. But I have nothing but doubts he'd be included, of course. Alright, let's wrap things up already and consider a couple characters from companies who've never had playable characters in Smash before. There's plenty of plausible outfits who fit the description. WayForward, Taito, Arxis, Rockstar, freaking Sony. It's really not that crazy a prospect anymore. That said, I think the most likely company to get a guest fighter in a new game is From Software. They've become a very prestigious name in gaming with titles like Demon's Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring, and are even partnering with Nintendo to bring us a AAA Switch 2 exclusive, The Duskbloods. And I believe the character FromSoft would go with to guest in Smash is the player character from their most memetic franchise, the Arisen Undead from Dark Souls. It seems feasible to me, and I wouldn't be thrilled nor mad about it. But now, at the end of a nearly hour-long recording session, we ask the big question. Which of this sort of character would I most like to see brought to Smash? There are so many possibilities, and plenty I would actually love to see. But I'm going to refrain from wildly unlikely choices or Icarusarian mold breakers, and just give the spot to a little fella who brings me much joy and exemplifies the exact spirit that makes the artistic medium of video gaming so singularly special. Yeah! Rayman. You know, I really do want to see him playable in a Smash game a whole lot, and yet, I don't feel like he's such a reach. He and even other characters from his series have been in the last 3 Smash games as trophies and spirits. And the Rayman series has recently crossed over with freaking Mario. Mario! Not just Rabbids, Rayman himself. Rayman can really use a W, and Smash fans have been keen to see him for years. I'd say he's feasible, and yeah, I'd go so far as to say I'd die happy to see him, even if he isn't a total long shot. And finally, that's that. 66, no wait, we counted Medusa twice. 65 potential Smash Bros. Newcomers rated on 2 tier lists, denoting likelihood and my own desire to see them. If you were to make a list like this of your own, I bet it would look very different. Not just because you almost certainly have different most wanted picks, but because likelihood is a difficult and largely subjective thing to denote too. So if you have any characters I didn't mention here you want to bring up, by all means, leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching. Roll the Endslate. My arm is killing me. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members for supporting this channel. If you would like early access to videos and a credit at the end of videos like you see here in front of you right now, consider pledging as little as $1 a month to my Patreon page or my YouTube memberships right here on YouTube. Thanks again. This was a long video to make. More videos are coming, but probably bi-weekly from now on at time of uploading. See you next time I see ya.